Alright everyone, and so as we have entered a new phase of the MCU with Fantastic Four First Steps, we now have 37 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it is crazy how far we've come with the MCU and their movies, and it's especially as all of them, some of them is top tier, or some of them is a hit or miss, but it's crazy how far this superhero franchise has come. And so I'm going to give you guys my big ranking of all 37 MCU movies, and this will be a full tier list ranking and give you guys my opinion on why it's there, and this will be a fun one as well to celebrate phase 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. So let's get right down to business. And so if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to show us on any future videos. But now let's get into this ranking. And so with the tiers I have for here is A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. We're doing this thing. Let's go. First one up is Ant-Man. To me, I'm putting this in C tier because, especially, I think the Ant-Man movies are severely underrated, and Scott Lang as a character played by Paul Rudd, he just brings the charm and charisma, but I just do think it's built for like family and entertaining fun, but especially when there are action sequences to be had, there are emotional moments, especially between Scott and Cassie, and especially when you have Hank Pym training him to be this character. And I think Ant-Man as a character being introduced, I do think it is fun, and I do like that type of story being told. I just like every single aspect, especially from the humor, and especially as there are great moments to be had, but as a movie itself, I do think Ant-Man is not like a serious movie, but it is severely underrated for me. Next up is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Yeah, this is an A-tier movie because what a brilliant send-off for the Guardians trilogy from James Gunn, because if you know him, he's like the mastermind when it comes to the comic book genre and the way that he introduced these characters to make us fall in love with them, plus they're instant fan favorites. And this movie delivers on all cylinders in terms of storytelling, but it gave us so many emotional moments, depths, and also Rocket's backstory. And oh my gosh, the High Evolutionary is probably my favorite, probably the best MCU villain ever to be portrayed on screen, and to make this one to hate him. He was such a menace for the way that he treated Rocket, but especially as an entire movie, it nails on everything. It makes us cry, it makes us want to laugh. Also, the soundtrack is a banger. James Gunn nails it every single step when it comes to the soundtrack for the Guardians movies. But yeah, this nails everything. I just definitely love the great send-off and the complete trilogy that James Gunn has pulled, especially as he's now onto the DC universe now. I mean, James Gunn can accomplish anything when it comes to the superhero genre like this. Next up is Iron Man. To me, yeah, this is going in A tier. As I think Iron Man is a brilliant movie to not only kicks off the superhero franchise known as the MCU, but especially with these 3 words from Tony Stark: I am Iron Man, and especially as the rest was history. After that, we fell in love with the superhero franchise. Iron Man delivers on every single aspect, especially for how he is brought to life as a character, the way that Robert Downey Jr. is now the best actor and everyone's favorite guy to play this character, and the way that he uses like high-tech armor to make his suit. And I think the suit itself is totally badass, and the way that it handles the character in like situations, every single superhero element that you wanted. To me, Iron Man is a top tier MCU movie for me, and the best way to kick off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Next up is Thunderbolts. To me, even though I give this high praise, to me, I think, yeah, this is going in A tier behind Guardians, because I think this is probably the best MCU movie that they put out in a while. It tackles themes like mental health that all of us can relate to, but it gives us great development, especially with these anti-heroes that have come from these situations, especially what they've been put through, but now they've come together and to make us fall in love with them as they're now become a family, and now to become a team and to take down a Sentry. And I think a Sentry was pulled off great, played by Lewis Pullman, and I think Yelena Belova, this made me appreciate the character even more, and also with Red Guardian, and I think Bucky Barnes was definitely a badass, and there's great action sequences with the car chase and the way that Bucky was going full Terminator, but it has everything you want, and that movie was built for the big screen. It is such an emotional story, and the way it tackles so many themes and elements, and we'll see these characters later down the line, but they're now called the new Avengers. Even though it underperformed at the box office, but it is still a great Marvel movie that they put out in a while, and I definitely fell in love with it. Even people fell in love with it as well, but I think it is such a great movie. There's no doubt about it. I stand by what I said. I think Thunderbolts is such a great MCU movie ever, period. Next up is Captain America, the First Avenger. To me, this is going in B tier because I do think that it is underrated, but I just think it's like a great way of introducing Captain America, the way that Chris Evans has portrayed the character of Steve Rogers, and what type of elements that this movie serves, especially with the chemistry between him and Peggy Carter, and the way that he has to go up against Red Skull, the main villain of the movie, and as we're in this World War II setting, with the way that Steve Rogers really wants to protect his world, especially serve for what's right, and he really believes in that, especially with the story elements of that character element, and I think, I mean, Captain America is my favorite MCU character and a great Marvel character overall, and I think it serves great sequences, great elements. Also, there's a emotional moment towards the end, but as a film built of the way to set up Captain America to lead the Avengers, and I still think it is a very good and great, entertaining superhero flick to me. I think Captain America, the First Avenger, definitely nailed it, but it was a good watch. Next up is Black Widow. To me, yeah, this is going in C tier behind Ant-Man, because for how I think on this film, this movie definitely came out at an unfortunate time. Not only was it because of the pandemic, but as a story and a movie overall, with the VFX and the CGI definitely have problems, and the storytelling was not that great. But I just still think it is underrated because it gave us the introduction of not only with Yelena Belova, but Red Guardian played by David Harbour, and I think he is a very funny character. I think that we finally got a solo Black Widow movie of the way of exploring Natasha Romanoff's backstory, her family, for how she joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and joined the Avengers. But I just do think that Black Widow is a severely underrated movie, but specifically, it was a good watch, a solid movie, but it's a movie that I'll never ever look back on, but there are heartfelt moments to be had, but I just do think that the choices that they made in terms of writing, it just made this film feel stupid. Next up is Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh my gosh, where the heck do I put this? You know what? I am putting this right here. Yeah, especially as those two go together, because especially not only did Guardians of the Galaxy kick off this brilliant trilogy from James Gunn, of the way that he tackles the concept of these prisoners that have now become a family, of the way that they made us fall in love with these characters, and it's also great storytelling. I mean, oh man, like James Gunn nails everything when it comes to the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, there is no doubt about it, and they're instantly fan favorites now, and I think with the soundtrack in here, specifically towards the beginning of the movie, for when Peter has to go to the Power Stone Chamber, and the opening score and the opening song, it rocks. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is definitely a top tier MCU movie for me, especially of the era when it came out, and again, it has James Gunn written all over it. He knows how to tackle humor and just every single bit of storytelling. I mean, Guardians is the king. Next up is Eternals. I think this is going in D tier because for a number of reasons. Because I just do think that this should have been a Disney Plus show, and with the way that we had like 10 characters introduced all at once, but it made me feel to care less about them. But I do think, even though it is underrated, it gave us more of like a different Marvel movie than we have ever seen. But I think that out of all the characters, like Sprite is definitely my favorite, but with the way that these characters are introduced, and for what reveals that it had. Also, I love Dane Whitman, played by Kit Harington, with the way that his character delivers. But I just do think that toward the end, for what they set up towards the end and the post-credit scene, that's never gonna pay off or ever gonna come into fruition because of the way that Marvel shifted things or reevaluated things. And I think it's such not a great movie, and I don't think we'll ever see these characters again. But yeah, again, there should have been a Disney Plus show, and I look back on this differently, but it got some good elements, especially with the Celestials and with the way that they're planning to threaten Earth. But the way that the Eternals come together to face the action, and I think it is definitely good, but no, it's not that great of a movie, and I stand by that. Next one we have here is Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, this is going in the back of D tier because they treated this movie as a comedy and an SNL skit, because with the way that Taika Waititi tackled this after what he did with Thor Ragnarok, and to follow that up with Thor: Love and Thunder, it's silly, it's complete nonsense, and with the way that Thor was not taken seriously as a character, and I hope that he's taken seriously in the upcoming Avengers movie, specifically in Avengers Doomsday, but the way that they brush over emotional moments and turn it into a joke and turn it into comedy nonsense that I did not give a damn about, and the way that they brush over the character storyline, and with the way that Gore was treated as a villain, he was wasted, especially when they introduced a Christian Bale in the MCU, and he was wasted like that. It was like totally wasted of the way that they treated Christian Bale in the MCU. But in terms of the action sequences and some cool elements, I thought it was fun and entertaining, but it was just a complete nonsense joke of a movie. Next up is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. You already know it. It's going, I think, right here in A tier, because this is not only a top tier MCU movie, it's a fast-paced political thriller, and it gave us the Winter Soldier and great hand-to-hand combat. And every time that this goes up on rewatch, and the way that the Russo brothers definitely got their start in the MCU with this movie, and the way that they tackle development with our characters, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I think around that time between this and Guardians of the Galaxy gave us great action sequences, and specifically the elevator fight scene is definitely my favorite. It is the highlight of the entire movie, and I love Steve Rogers as a character, and with the way that he goes up against the Winter Soldier, and it is everything that you ever want in an MCU movie, and it still rocks. It still rocks, and it's top tier MCU to this day. And yeah, that's all I got. And next one up is the Avengers. Yeah, this is going in A tier, right? And because this was not only the best Marvel movie, but it gave us a great team of Earth's mightiest heroes. It got some great moments, great quotable moments, and it's just great action-packed. The Battle of New York, Loki as a villain, the Chitauri, and everything that they wanted. It's great iconic moments, specifically when they team up with the Shot. It is so memorable. It is so iconic. And the next up is the Fantastic Four: First Steps. Let's see, where do I put this? Because this is the newly released MCU movie. To me, I think this is definitely going in B tier. Anyway, yeah, I'm putting it right here in front of Captain America: The First Avenger, because this was Marvel's first family and their debut in the MCU, and with the way that it tackles the family dynamic, from the character development to the humor, and Galactus as a villain, he was truly menacing, he was terrifying, especially out of all the adaptations of the Fantastic Four. This movie was definitely brilliant, and the way that it captures the comic book aesthetics of the 60s and in New York, and it is definitely such a good movie. And I think every character nailed their aspect, specifically with Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm the Thing. And even if you add on top with the Michael Giacchino score and the way that it sprinkles, and it screams an MCU movie, and a brilliant way to kick off Phase 6, and especially with Matt Jackman coming off of WandaVision, and this movie perfectly nails all of those cylinders, and it's beautiful storytelling. I just do think that these characters are set up to progress in the future of the MCU, and I can't wait for what they have to tackle as well. And I think Fantastic Four First Steps, it is a brilliant MCU movie that totally captures a brilliant comic adaptation of Marvel's first family. Next up is Spider-Man Far From Home. To me, I'm putting this in the middle of C tier because I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just a solid watch that's not being taking place in New York, and with the way that Peter Parker is handling his identity, and I think Mysterio was a great villain, and with the way that they introduced Night Monkey, just like Spider-Man alone, I kind of liked him, but yeah, it's just like so many things that goes on and on. I think Far From Home is definitely an underrated Spider-Man flick, but again, it made $1 billion at the box office, and I think they could have handled it better, but I just do think that Spider-Man vs. Mysterio was a great showdown in the movie, but otherwise, it is an underrated Spider-Man flick in the MCU. Next up is Thor. I'm putting this in the middle of B tier because with Thor being introduced as a character of the way that we were introduced to Asgard and to the God of Thunder, and with Kenneth Branagh and his direction for how this character was going to be progressed moving forward. And there are some great moments, especially between the chemistry between him and Jane Foster, the way that romantic dynamic is pulled off. And Loki, I think he was treated as like a spoiled brat, and I think Tom Hiddleston delivers everything, and especially as Thor wants to go after the throne, and I just definitely like everything that goes on, but I think the introduction of Thor in this movie is definitely cool, and I really fell in love with Chris Hemsworth after his adaptation of Thor and his take on the character overall, and especially for how far Thor's journey has come after this movie. I think it's pretty great, but I do think Thor is a good watch, and it is still entertaining. Next up is Captain America Brave New World. To me, I'm putting this right here in C tier because, especially with the behind-the-scenes controversy with so many reshoots and rewrites, this movie, yeah, it definitely has problems, but it still delivers great action sequences, which I dug. The leader as the villain was not in a portrayal that the way that I would expect, but especially with the showdown between Captain America and Red Hulk. But I do think Red Hulk was definitely should be kept out of the marketing, but it was pretty cool. But especially with the CGI and the green screen, oh gosh, it has so many problems I don't want to nitpick out that I can rant about. But with Anthony Mackie as the lead role and to take on the mantle as Captain America, and with the way that it definitely feels like a action-packed political thriller, and it was definitely good. But again, it was just like dragged for so long, and I just do think that they could have handled stuff better and they took stuff out. But again, this movie has problems, but it is a solid action-packed flick. And then next up is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and to that I am putting it right here because again, yeah, there's so much to love about the Guardians trilogy from James Gunn, and I do think Guardians Volume 2 definitely steps it up a bit, especially when we are introduced to Peter Quill's father, and the way that it definitely explores a character dynamic even more with the Guardians and this family, and the soundtrack is always a banger, and there are moments to be had with Peter and Gamora. Towards the end of that movie, it gave us like emotional scenes, specifically with Yondu's death, and also that was a good setup for him, but it was emotional as well. Yeah, there are like funny and comedic moments, and James Gunn definitely nails the character development in terms of the humor, and yeah, I do think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a great follow-up to the first movie with the way that the Guardians handle things. Also, the opening song to this, it rocks. Next up is Thor: The Dark World. Yeah, I'm putting this in D tier because with Thor: The Dark World, it is not a bad movie, but I just do think it's not so great. The way that especially after people have seen this movie, Thor was not such a great character, like taken seriously, like especially with these people in Asgard that take Jane, and with Thor and Loki as they are handled as a dynamic. But yeah, this movie definitely has problems, but I just do think Thor: The Dark World is a weak MCU entry, but especially when Taika Waititi came in to save the day with Ragnarok. But I just do think that Thor's character was not treated much in The Dark World. But yet again, I still had some time with them. Anyways, next one, we have is Thor Ragnarok. But I just do think that this is a better MCU entry. To me, this is going. Let's see. I want to put this right here in A tier because this fixed up Thor's character development and the way that his characters progressed, and it was much better written when Taika Waititi was brought in to direct, and with the way that his portrayal of Thor was seen in the superhero franchise. And when you have the Grand Master played by Jeff Goldblum, and the way that he had to be a gladiator against the Hulk, and I think that sequence was so entertaining, and I think it was a great sequence pulled off with Hulk and Thor as gladiators. But I just do think that Hulk was downgraded to from Savage Hulk. But I just do think that this movie was action-packed. It was a ton of fun. It definitely nails humor, but also carries emotional moments with every single bit of it that you want from Thor. Thor Ragnarok is definitely a much better step up. It is a great peak MCU movie. Next up is Avengers Age of Ultron. Let's see. I think I'm putting this right here in B tier because with the way that our characters are treated as a family, of the way that their development has progressed so much, and with Ultron that wanted to take over the world, we got to know our characters even more, especially with their backgrounds, and especially with the third act, it elevated so much. And I think that this was such a great follow-up to the first Avengers movie, and for what our characters have to go through in terms of what Earth's mighty heroes have to do. Yeah, Avengers Age of Ultron rocks, and there's some great action moments to be had in terms of elements that are nailed here. And also, I definitely love the flashbacks and everything. Yeah, it is such a great movie. And next we have is Deadpool and Wolverine. And yeah, I am putting this in A tier. I think right here. Because not only was this a great comic book movie, but a really amazing superhero movie in general, because we got to see the team up between Deadpool and Wolverine, with Hugh Jackman's return to the character for the first time since 2017's Logan, and Ryan Reynolds' return to the character since Deadpool 2, but with the way that these characters work as a dynamic, and with the way that Wade's universe is at stake, and with the way that Deadpool is treated in the MCU, I kind of fell in love with it, and especially as I had a bit of hesitation before it came out, but yeah, Sean Levy is the GOAT. He delivers on every single bit of storytelling, emotional moments, and with the way that he treats characters and he tackles storytelling, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine was the ultimate superhero movie. It has everything that they want with how to tell a comic book movie come to life, especially with the cameos that are in this movie, and they really serve a purpose, and it really serves as a tribute to the old school Marvel characters from like the early 2000s, and I think, yeah, this was the ultimate superhero movie. Yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine is the GOAT. Next up is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Let's see, I do think this is like not an awful movie, but I'm putting this in C tier because I do think it's an unsatisfying mess, and I think with the way that Doctor Strange and Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch, were on screen, it's like they both have to share a movie together, because on one half you have a Doctor Strange story, and the other half you have Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, and let's face it, the Scarlet Witch should have her own solo movie by now. I mean, do it, Marvel, do it, but specifically, I definitely like the horror elements and the technique of Sam Raimi's direction with his directorial style, because as he's known for The Evil Dead and the Spider-Man trilogy, but the way that Multiverse of Madness was handled, I just do think it could have been better, but I do think that things would have been different. The way that America Chavez was brought to life, and I love her character played by Xochitl Gomez. But with like Doctor Strange's story for how he's progressed much, but I just do think that it is a served as a not such a great entry, but there are some good moments, and with the Illuminati, and they were wasted and wiped away by Wanda, but there were rewrites. Yeah, this movie has problems, but I just do think that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a movie to be remembered, but I just do think it has problems. And then next up is Avengers Infinity War. Yep, right here. Yep, right here in A tier, because with Avengers Infinity War, it marked the beginning of the end for that certain era of the MCU, and the way that the Russo brothers tackles every bit of it, especially from the character groupings, with Thanos as being treated as the big main threat. I mean, this was the ultimate event, and the way that Thanos treated as a villain, I fell in love with. I have nothing else to say, but Avengers Infinity War and Endgame were like the prime hype event that ended the certain era of the MCU, and I definitely love Thanos as the villain. I just loved Infinity War so much, especially with Wakanda and with all these different locations, and they single-handedly nailed everything. I loved Infinity War. It was definitely peak, I tell you. Next up is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Let's see. I think I'll put this in C and D tier right here, because I just do think that they could have handled stuff better for how Kang was treated as a villain, and with the way that the quantum realm is explored, because we're basically spending 90% of the movie in the quantum realm, with Scott, Cassie, and the family were like going down there to explore more for what is going to be revealed, and the way that this was going to set up Kang to be like this kind of Thanos of the multiverse saga, and I just think the ending was dumb and silly, and it played it too safe, and I just do think that like they could have like done it better. I don't think we'll ever see that storyline come into fruition, especially after what happened at Marvel with Jonathan Majors. Scott and Cassie and their dynamic as a father and daughter really pulls on the heartstrings, but again, as a movie, it definitely has CGI problems, and it definitely has some good moments in there for sure, but yeah, that's all I gotta say. Next up is Captain America Civil War, and yet again, this is definitely an A-tier movie, because even though it felt like Avengers 2.5, but this was the event where we have Team Iron Man or Team Captain America, but I mean, it's especially as I loved every single element that is pulled off. We get introduced to Spider-Man, Black Panther, especially the airport battle of whose side do you take on, especially with the Sokovia Accords, of the way of splitting up the Avengers, and with the way that the government is involved, especially with Thaddeus Ross. And I just loved every single action-packed moment, and this was the ultimate showdown between our heroes. It was like half Captain America, half Avengers movie, and I definitely loved Captain America Civil War, and I think it is another great MCU flick. It is a great showdown. Next up is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. To me, let's see. I think I put this in B tier, because I definitely like that it paid a tribute to Chadwick Boseman and gave us the introduction of Namor, one of the mutants introduced in the MCU, but I do think it is severely dragged on for so long, especially with the people of Wakanda, with the Atlanteans that are attacking them, that they are the threat. But it serves great emotional scenes, great action-packed moments. It is definitely a beautiful movie, a great sequel, and with the way that Wakanda is treated, we are introduced to so many new things. Plus, and it also gave us the introduction of Riri Williams as Ironheart, that will go on to have her own show as we have right now. But in terms of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I still think it is a very good movie. It is beautiful, it is well touched, and it definitely pays a type of a tribute, and especially with the new Black Panther that is introduced, and I definitely loved every single bit of it. I just definitely liked it. Next up is Avengers Endgame. Yep, A tier all the way, because this marked the end of that certain era of the MCU. This was the ultimate hype level event in that era alone, and with the way that it tackles time travel towards the third act, and especially with all of our main heroes going up against Thanos and the Chitauri, and it has fist pumping and cheerful moments, and especially with those lines from Captain America, Avengers Assemble. Oh, that was such a great audience reaction moment from the theater, and this movie will always be looked back on. Infinity War and Endgame, the hype will never come close to these movies, especially with the upcoming Doomsday and Secret Wars with Doctor Doom being introduced. Infinity War and Endgame, those peak movies from the MCU rocked in that decade. And next we have up is Spider-Man Homecoming. To me, I think I'll put this in B tier because especially it's like a coming of age story with him in school, but I just definitely like its introduction, and with the way that Tony Stark was his mentor and every single situation that Peter goes through, and especially when he has to hide his identity, and the Vulture played by Michael Keaton as the main villain, I definitely dug. He will do anything for his family and to protect them, and I definitely think Vulture was a great tier MCU villain for me. Spider-Man Homecoming was a great MCU movie, had a great story elements, especially as a coming of age flick, and I definitely like Tom Holland's portrayal of the character, and with the way that it would be progressed later down the line, and I think Spider-Man Homecoming as like a great story set in New York, which I dug. I loved it. Yeah, so good. Next up is Iron Man 2. Definitely going in, I think C tier, because I just do think that some stuff goes on for too long, and with the way that we have Whiplash and Justin Hammer, and I think the suit up sequences, give me chills. They are action packed, especially on the race car track. Amazing pull up, is so iconic. But as we as an entire storyline, and with the way that we are introduced to Don Cheadle as a War Machine, Tony Stark as a character in that sequel, and I think it is good, but just some stuff could have been cut out, but it takes too long to get into the main story for it to kick in, but I think that it is a good movie. Yeah, there I'll tell you. Next up is Captain Marvel. I think I'll put this in C tier because not only did I find this very fascinating, but it came out at a time where people had to watch this before Avengers Endgame and did $1 billion. But to me, I just do think this was severely underrated, and with Carol Danvers played by Brie Larson, and the way that he has to take on this role, and with Nick Fury, and as we are taken back to the old days of having a young, de-aged Nick Fury, and I think it's very good. But in terms of, we have a Flurkin, and we have Skrulls introduced, and with the way that this movie is structured, of Carol Danvers' story, especially with Monica Rambeau, and I do think it is a severely underrated movie, and I think it is not so great for any reason, but again, it is very entertaining with great action sequences to be had there. Next up is The Incredible Hulk. Again, especially, I think I said this in my last MCU ranking, I think this ended up in C or D tier, I'm not sure. I am putting this in, you know what, I'm putting this in C tier because, actually right here, because I think like Edward Norton's Hulk, Savage Hulk, was better portrayed on screen, but in terms of an entire storyline, it definitely has some moments that has problems with Thaddeus Ross, and especially with Blonsky. I just do think that The Incredible Hulk is a severely underrated MCU flick. People say, oh, it's not part of the MCU, but it is, and it comes right after Iron Man, and I just do think that some parts of the storyline is definitely weak, but they definitely pulled off a great adaptation of the Hulk, and I just do think that it is, it's severely underrated. Next up is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Again, I think this is I think it is definitely like a C tier movie because, again, it's not anything too serious, but I just do think that I could have liked it a lot better. And even with these Ant-Man movies, they are designed for good old family, entertaining, action-packed fun. But in terms of storylines, of the way things that were tackled, I just definitely like Ant-Man and the Wasp and their dynamic on screen and the way that they handled certain moments. That's what I'll say here for Ant-Man and the Wasp. Next up is the Marvels. Again, to me, putting this like right here in D tier because, and even though I love the dynamic between Carol Danvers, Monica Rambeau, and Kamal Khan, and the way that they switched places, which I thought was very, very cool, and with the way that what it's like to have the powers switched up, but I just do think storylines were weak. The main villain was also weak. I think Kamala Khan carried and crushed the movie. I mean, Uma Balani is definitely a fan of all of this, and I think I can't wait to see what her character portrayal holds for the rest of the MCU, but it was not that great of a movie, but it is treated like a generic movie with a terrible villain, and the VFX were not as good, but yet again, it gave us Florkins, and yeah, that's all I'll say from it. The Marvels is severely not that great, but I could have enjoyed it better there. And next up is Doctor Strange, the 2016 movie. To me, I think I'll put this in B tier because it gave us the Sorcerer Supreme introduced, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, and Mads Mikkelsen as the villain, and with the way that we are introduced to the mystic arts in the MCU and for what kind of magic craft that it holds. And I liked every bit of the story that is being told on screen. And I think with like Inner Dimensions, and also Scott Derrickson really nailed every single element of Doctor Strange. And especially as we are have that mystic art side introduced into the MCU, it is definitely very, very good. I enjoyed every single aspect that's to come with Doctor Strange. Next up is Iron Man 3. I think this is going definitely in D tier because even though I think of this as a Christmas movie, but Iron Man 3 definitely has problems. The Mandarin, and with the way that we are introduced to not only that, but Harley Keener, played by Ty Simpkins, but as a movie itself, it definitely is weak, but it has problems. I mean, yeah, that's all I'll say from it, but Iron Man 3 definitely has some good sequences to be had there, but with the way that Tony Stark was treated as a character overall, and I do think it is definitely a weak MCU movie to me, but hey, I think of Iron Man 3 as a Christmas movie any other way. Next up is Black Panther. Let's see. To me, I definitely put this. You know what? I'm putting this in B tier because this introduced us to Wakanda, the character of Black Panther, and especially as he goes up against Killmonger. But I just do think that there are moments that people were definitely not a fan of, but I do love every single bit of those layer deep, and with the way that Ryan Coogler definitely wanted to bring the storyline to life in like such a brilliant way, and I definitely love all the science and Wakanda technology, but it is a type of a movie that it is severely like overlooked, but this won Oscars, and I think Chadwick Boseman's performance, it is severely so brilliant to me, and I think Black Panther is definitely a great, entertaining, action-packed movie. Next up is Spider-Man: No Way Home. Yep. This is going. You know what? I'll put this in A tier because this was the definitive Spider-Man movie. It gave us 3 live-action Spider-Man on screen played by Tom Holland, Tobey Maguire, and Andrew Garfield. And it was the great end to the Homecoming MCU trilogy, and it gave us not only what to care about the character of Spider-Man, but what it means to be that hero. And Tom Holland's performance, the way that he delivers every single aspect, especially when he goes up against Green Goblin in the apartment, it is not forced. And I think every single element, it is the best superhero movie ever. It is the best Spider-Man movie of all time. It was a way to celebrate 20 years of live-action Spider-Man movies come to life. And yeah, there are some great moments. Yeah, it is so damn cool. And the last one up we have is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Yeah, to me, yeah, this is also going in A tier because not only did it give us a great introduction to Shang-Chi played by Simu Liu, but I think it is the best MCU movie, especially to come out post-pandemic, and especially with everything that is being introduced, specifically with his world and the Mandarin and with the Ten Rings involved. And I think it is a movie that is introduced much differently, but I think Simu Liu crushed every single aspect, especially with every culture, and especially with the action sequences, of the way that everything was being pulled off. And I think it is such a fantastically made movie. Justin Quentin definitely nails every single technique for what's to come. And also, when are we ever gonna see like Shang-Chi again? Probably in like, well, we're not gonna see him next in Avengers Doomsday. So yeah, they'll tell you. But I think Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a beautifully made MCU flick that is to come out post the pandemic, and I think it is such a brilliant movie to be told within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so there you have it. This is my MCU ranking of all the movies, with Fantastic Four first steps. And yeah, like that's all I have to say from there. This is my updated ranking, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the future of the MCU holds, specifically with Spider-Man Brand New Day, the upcoming Avengers Doomsday, and Secret Wars. It's all going to be big from here on out. But that's going to do it for this video. Just let me know in the comments down below and what thoughts on my ranking, and what do you rank all these MCU movies from worst to best? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to turn on notifications for future videos, and also follow all my social medias or linked down below. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.